Welcome to Voices of Biocomplexity, conversations inspired by complexity. I'm Erin Raymond from the University of Virginia's Biocomplexity Institute, and in each conversation we explore how data, modeling, and interdisciplinary science help us understand the interconnected challenges shaping our world. Today's conversation started with a question I couldn't answer myself. Why are diseases we thought we understood still becoming major public health stories? Recent measles outbreaks in the United States have renewed questions about vaccination, while Ebola continues to emerge in parts of Africa, reminding us that infectious diseases remain a global challenge. Joining me for this conversation are two of the Institute's infectious disease experts, Bryan and Srini Venkatraman. They develop large-scale computational models that help public health officials respond to disease outbreaks and understand the complex interactions that shape how diseases spread through populations.
I'm Bryan Lewis. I'm a computational epidemiologist. I work at the Biocomplexity Institute and been studying infectious disease, building models, and either helping guide response to outbreaks or write papers about policies and things that would help keep them under control.
For a long time,
for over 2 decades.
Yeah, a long time.
I'm Srini Venkatraman. I'm a research assistant professor at the Biocomplexity Institute, and I've been with the group for over a decade now. I just
Crazy.
thought about it, and then it's a lot of it has been consumed by COVID. I cut my teeth into infectious disease modeling with the group, and I do a lot of data science and computational model development, and in assistance of a lot of these response-based studies, but also trying to extract scientific questions from that can be investigated with other partners.
Right.
With our work with the military, we've taken a lot of these sort of case studies where it is this disease. Like we even looked at, was it measles in Romania? I think at one time we were looking at outbreaks of measles in Romania, one of an ally, and then they were having a little trouble controlling it. And so we became experts in reading Romanian, building a representation of that population and looking at where, it was likely to spread next so that the government of Romania could sort of implement control measures a little bit more effectively.
And that's what I was actually thinking about was scenario modeling and kind of what that means. So we have this synthetic population, but we don't just run it through once and say, oh yeah, if you do all this, this is what's going to happen. We, with our partners, create scenarios that they think would be useful, right? And then we're like, well, what if it's, this, what if there's 100 people? What if there's 600 people? What if they're dancing? I don't know, what if they're overexerting themselves? What if they're whatever, are they in their cars? And we have a look at all kinds of data for that, right? We layer this data. So we have mobility and general census and geography and all of that.
Right, exactly. That's what this whole framework is set up for. It's the world of what ifs. Whenever you're trying to make a complicated decision, you're always curious. What if I did this? What if I did that? Well, what if I didn't do as much of that and a little bit more of that somewhere in between the two? Yeah. And that's what is useful doing this in a computer, because all you're doing is using a little bit of extra electricity. You can generate another trajectory of a possible world that might exist if you did a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that.
Right.
And so to do that, like you were just saying, we need to synthesize a lot of different information. And so in my mind, the way that these models are really useful is for integrating different data. Not all data is just like a data set that you download, like the census data or the mobility from cell phone records or something of that nature, but is also processed. And so it's like an action that does happen. Like, what are people likely to do when they become sick? We kind of know that, but it's not just a data set you download. So you can build in these behaviors that sort of, as a person evolves in an illness or some other effect, like having lost power or being told to evacuate, they can make decisions. And then as the world that we've been simulating evolves, they get put into different situations. And because we know the sort of rules of behavior, you can imbue that into these people and allow them to take different trajectories. And that's how we can get into this sort of richer representation of what if we did a little more of this and a little bit less of that?
Yeah.
And you can create a whole distribution of possible futures that would arise, which is a little richer than oftentimes a statistical style approach where you're looking at likelihoods and you just sort of land 57%, which sometimes isn't as useful as the full distribution of how you got to that 57%.
And then people, unlike the weather forecasting, people might see these predictions and then they change their behavior, which makes it really convenient that we can then go back in and say, okay, well, actually now, all of this is happening. And so, okay, people were listening to what we said, which then kind of makes us look like we were wrong.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's a danger, not a danger, but that's a consequence for us is like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You said 75% of people were going to be infected with something. And then they weren't because we warned everyone, hey, if you keep doing what you're doing.
Right. Certain actions happen and maybe it's not. It's always great to be wrong about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Predicting disaster and disaster is averted because actions took place that changed the course.
Right. We wanted to put these two diseases together in this episode to talk about these two things at the same time, but they are different. But what are their similarities that you see, like in why we put them together? Do we look at them the same way? Do we, as the modelers, just look at them the same way?
So in a lot of ways, depending upon the phase of the outbreak that you're in, some different diseases might exhibit similar characteristics. So, like, for example, if even during COVID, we saw this, like in the initial importation phase, you're interested in like which region is at risk for the next thing. But once it's established in a region, you're more worried about how quickly is it growing, what would different kind of interventions do. So in that sense, different kind of models would come into play. So in the context of Ebola, for example, right now, since it's a very localized outbreak in the DRC with probably some spillover into Uganda, the question is still like, we have a kind of framework called agent-based models where we're looking at interactions of individuals at a very like micro scale. And so those kind of models will be very useful to understand impact, say, safe burials or looking at potential treatment or isolation policies. Whereas once it's started to infect multiple regions and you're trying to look at a risk for other regions in DRC or like risk for other countries, then you start to zoom out. And so a representation at individual level doesn't make sense. Or I mean, it still makes sense, but it's too cumbersome to kind of pull in all the data. And maybe you're taking a hammer to some place where you don't need a hammer.
Right.
So you start looking at what we call meta-population models, where kind of group individuals and then look at just rates at which these population groups come in contact with each other. But then in some cases, you don't have good representations of these subpopulations, or you're just trying to understand like in a very abstract sense, like for example, during COVID, like when multiple variants are competing for like the population, you just care about those biological characteristics of those variants, and you just want to study them in a very normative population. So then you kind of even zoom out a bit and just do like differential equation-based models, which just assume like everyone mixes with everyone, but let's study these dimensions of the problem in much more detail. Right. So in a lot of ways, for these different diseases, depending upon what you're trying to study and what data you have access to, you could use the same models or different models.
Okay. And the whole differential equation thing, all the different models, that's a different episode. So look for that because we'll break all those down. I want to break those down into bite-sized chunks because that's a lot of information. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. I'm Erin Raymond, and this has been Voices of Biocomplexity. If you enjoyed today's discussion, you can find more conversations, videos, and stories from the Biocomplexity Institute on our website, YouTube channel, and your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, stay curious, and thanks for listening.